Okay, hello students. Hey, we made it to the final unit. So we're going to read the Odyssey. I will have an electric copy online. You want to make sure you use that one because, or at least buy a copy that uses the translator and the specific um, type of writing it is. So the Odyssey is a epic poem, but we're going to read the prose version translated by Samuel Butler. So if you get your own version, that's the one you need. Otherwise, just use the link to the one online. You can also find. I might put a link to a YouTube, audiobook version. But just make sure it's the prose version, which means it's told in story form, not in poem form. And you read the one that is translated by Samuel Butler. So that'll be important. Uh, as usual, before we get into it, there's some terms and some things we need to go over. Not quite as much as the last two, with Shakespeare and the Greek tragedy, but the epic. There are some conventions that we need to talk about. So let's get into it. Um, okay, so what's an epic? Well, it's a narrative poem. So it's a poem, really long poem that tells a story. Um, and like I said, the version we have is not in poem form. You can find this in poem form. We're just not reading that one. When I say elevated style, we're going to get into it more later, but when you read it, you get the sense that it seems to think that it's so important. Everything it says seems to be presented in a way that just seems like it's important and you need to pay attention, and it's so epic. You'll kind of get what I mean once you start reading it. um, uh, it's almost always involving characters of high position. We're not going to be talking about you know basic civilians. These are kings and queens and epic warriors and leaders and that sort of thing. There's always a series of adventures. It's very episodic. You go to one place, you have an adventure. You go to another place, you have an adventure. You go to another place, you have an adventure. It plays like a video game sometimes. Um, and then there's often some historical and cultural significance. So, like, there's one epic that's basically the Bible story. So, that's obviously some cultural significance. There's another one that, is like folk legends that people have been telling, spreading the story around in the culture for generations. There's all kinds of different stories, and some of them are supposedly about a war. Did this war, actually happen? The Trojan War? Maybe there's arguments about whether it actually happened. So, but there's two types of epics. One is the folk epic, where nobody knows who actually wrote it. For Beowulf, which you'll read as a senior, people do know who first copied it down into print, but who actually told the story, nobody knows. It was written down by a priest, and we know this because he added, even though it's a pagan story, he added all kinds of like Christian, values to it. Homer, same thing. Nobody knows who Homer is, um, but that's the name given to these two epics. A lot of times, these things were just told in the oral tradition. They were this was the form of entertainment back then, was people would just sit around and tell stories, right? um, does that say Monday? This is an old presentation. We're not starting on Monday. We'll probably start reading on Wednesday, actually. What's today? Say Tuesday? No, Thursday. We'll start on Thursday. I think. I don't know what day of the week it is. Does anyone know? Anyway? No? Okay. Well, let's just move on. And then the art epic, everybody knows who actually wrote it. These are generally more modern. Dante's Inferno, which is actually a three-parter. Dante's Inferno is where the main hero walks around the different levels of hell, and it's interesting because you see who is hanging out in the different levels of hell, and the top levels, which really aren't that bad, are people that have to be in hell according to the author. but who really aren't bad people. So it's like uncircumcised babies or something, which that's an interesting historical artifact. And then the worst ones are in the center of hell, right? And these are really bad people. I don't remember who's there. It's been a while since I've read that one, but you'll read that next year. There's also one where the person goes to purgatory, and then one more where the person goes to heaven. There's all the different levels of heaven and stuff. But Inferno is the one everybody reads, right? Paradise Lost was actually alluded to in Frankenstein. That's where it's basically the Bible story, and so you hang out with Satan for a while, and because he's just been kicked out of heaven. And so I don't, you might read that in AP4, you might not. The Aeneid, I was supposed to, in my Latin class, I was supposed to translate that. I think I just bought a copy of the book that was translated for me. Man, what a little cheater. All right. Now, as far as the Iliad and the Odyssey go, and again, we don't know who the actual author is, but the Iliad is about the Trojan War, but if you look here, it's really the end of the Trojan War, right? It's the part that everybody knows where the warrior snuck into the hollowed out horse that was given as a gift, and they came out, so it was brought in through the gates, and then the warriors came out at night and killed everybody. And so it's that basic episode versus the Odyssey. If you'll notice, book one starts here. At the end of hanging out with Calypso for all those years. And it kind of goes to this point, and then at this point, he tells the story of what happens in these episodes here. These are all the fun action episodes that most students enjoy. The rest of it's kind of, it's fine. And then it jumps back to this part here, and then we continue, we finish, his journey. This is how epics run. They always start in the middle and they go for a little bit and then they flash back. Okay. So we'll get to that as well. But, this guy Odysseus is at war for 10 years. He left his wife and kids behind. He was at war for 10 years, and then it takes him another 10 years, to get home. So he's gone for 20 years. And they make a point of that in the book. Okay, so we need to talk about the epic hero. This is fun. Let's see. Can I play this? Hello? Testing. See if you can actually hear what's going on here. TED Talk.
What did Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, and Frodo all have in common with the heroes of ancient myths? What if I told you they are all variants of the same hero? Do you believe that? Joseph Campbell did. He studied myths from all over the world and published a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, retelling dozens of stories and explaining how each represents the monomyth, or hero's journey. So, what is the hero's journey? Think of it as a cycle. The journey begins and ends in the hero's ordinary world, but the quest passes through an unfamiliar, special world. Along the way, there are some key events. Think about your favorite book or movie.
Okay, so generally this is taken from Joseph Campbell and his idea of the monomyth, where Joseph Campbell looked at all these different stories of heroes across all the cultures in the world, and noticed that they all had kind of similarities. There's different versions of this, but basically it's kind of the same, where it starts in one place, a person's called to adventure, goes through a series of different adventures, and then ends up in this same, back in the hometown, but a changed person. So just know that there's different versions of this, and there's different parts that might be new here, different here than Joseph Campbell's version.
Does it follow this pattern? Status quo. That's where we start.
These are the different steps.
1 o'clock. Call to adventure. The hero receives a mysterious message, an invitation, a challenge. 2 o'clock. Assistance. The hero needs some help, Probably from someone older, wiser. 3 o'clock, departure. The hero crosses the threshold from his normal, safe home and enters the special world and adventure. We're not in Kansas anymore. 4 o'clock, trials. Being a hero is hard work. Our hero solves a riddle, slays a monster, escapes from a trap. 5 o'clock, approach. It's time to face the biggest ordeal, the hero's worst fear. 6 o'clock, crisis. This is the hero's darkest hour. He faces death and possibly even dies, only to be reborn. 7 o'clock, treasure. As a result, the hero claims some treasure, special recognition, or power. 8 o'clock, result. This can vary between stories. Do the monsters bow down before the hero, or do they chase him as he flees from the special world? 9 o'clock, return. After all that adventure, the hero returns to his ordinary world. 10 o'clock, new life. This quest has changed the hero. He has outgrown his old life. 11 o'clock, resolution. All the tangled plot lines get straightened out. 12 o'clock, status quo, but upgraded to a new level. Nothing is quite the same once you're a hero. Many popular books and movies follow this ancient formula pretty closely, but let's see how well The Hunger Games fits the hero's journey template. When does Katniss Everdeen hear a call to adventure that gets the story moving? When her sister's name is called from the lottery. How about assistance? Is anyone going to help her on her adventure? Hey, Mitch. What about departure? Does she leave her ordinary world? She gets on a train to the capital. Okay, so you get the idea. What do you have in common with Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, and Frodo?
Okay, so this formula you could see in almost anything. You could apply this template, and it doesn't always fit perfectly. Some stories fit way better than others. Like one of the ones that really fits it to a T is like Moana, right? Because not only do they have all these different elements, but even the songs are kind of matched with each of the elements. So like status quo, she's talking about staying on the island and her place on the island, and remember the coconuts, remember the trees, the island gives you what you need and no one leaves. That's her status quo, right? She's not allowed to go anywhere. But then you have, I've been staring at the edge of the water. Okay, so now that's the call to adventure. She's, heading off. She has assistance by Maui. Like it's kind of uncanny exactly how much it fits that. And then you're like, the one that is always kind of a tough one is you're supposed to go to the underworld essentially. Well, she go she goes to the place. This is the one song that some people love, some people hate, but it's this the crab that says shiny, right? Well, they dive down like under the water to go down to this place. So that's kind of the underworld for them. Um, Oedipus kind of follows it. What was it? I was just watching something about Jaws where it follows this. I mean, any of these um, typical hero type stories will follow this kind of formula. So now this video is going to connect all of that to you.
Well, you're human, just like them. The hero's journey myth exists in all human cultures and keeps getting updated because we humans reflect on our world through symbolic stories of our own lives. You leave your comfort zone, have an experience that transforms you, and then you recover and do it again. You don't literally slay dragons or fight Voldemort, but you face problems just as scary. Joseph Campbell said, "In the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek." What is the symbolic cave you fear to enter? Auditions for the school play? Baseball tryouts? Love?
Mr. Kramer's essays.
Watch for this formula in books, movies, and TV shows you come across. You will certainly see it again.
Everywhere.
But also,
It's
sense
everywhere.
it in your own life. Listen for your call to adventure. Accept the challenge. Conquer your fear and claim the treasure you seek. And then do it all over again.
Uh-oh. back to business. So, and remember that the Greek epic poem, it again is one of the earliest pieces of literature that we have. So, this hero that's created here is pretty much, at least for a long period of literature, a time in literature, was the type of hero that we saw all the time. So an archetype is just like the typical. That's weird. Huh. Is the typical like type of hero that you would see. Nowadays it's a little bit different, right? But you have unusual circumstances of birth, was raised by, someone else, or born into royalty, or who knows, right? Um, that certainly is true for Oedipus. An event, often traumatic, leads to an adventure or a quest. So, like, somebody dies. In Moana, it was the grandmother dying, right? This is the reason she ended up wanting to do that. Hero's reluctant, doesn't want to do it. Luke Skywalker is a perfect example of this, right? Uncle Owen and what's her name die, so he goes off to adventure. Hero has a special weapon, lightsaber, right? Uh, Only he can wield. Yep. Hero always has supernatural help. Again, this one's kind of stretched, but some kind of assistance, right? In the originals, there's always some kind of supernatural gods and goddesses. The Greek, gods and goddesses would have been the help. Hero must prove himself or herself many times while on the adventure. Hero has a flaw and overcomes it by the end of the journey. Often hubris. You'll see that in this one. Thinks he's better than the gods. Hero travels, to the underworld to seek atonement. Sometimes literal, sometimes just like the worst possible place you could ever imagine having to go. When the hero dies, he or she is rewarded, spiritually immortalized, remembered throughout history for contributing to society. So there you go. Your basic hero, right? This is pretty much mostly the courage and sacrifice, determination, that kind of stuff. But there's a few nice ones in there too, What is this? This is driving me crazy. Can we? Hello? Yeah. Well, that's because I don't want that there. Can I? Can I not get rid of this? Oh no. Also, where? This is also driving me crazy. Why? Why can't I get back to the? Sorry about that. Okay. Where was I? Okay, so heroic stature, national, international importance. A lot of times people already know, who the character is. So, like Paradise Lost, God, Satan, people already are familiar usually. Um, okay, epic settings. We're not just talking like it doesn't take place in one room or one city. And we're talking giant amounts of space are covered, traveling, that kind of thing. Lord of the Rings, right? Um, and in this case, he's traveling all over. I'll show you a map at the end. He's going all over the place. In the case of Paradise Lost, they travel the entire universe. Like that's pretty much as epic as it gets, right? So it covers great nations or the universe. You're not sitting in one place. Um, Epic action. So we had, in this case, in this story, it's 10 years on a boat. But there's lots of little episodes where we're fighting monsters and that kind of stuff. Deeds of great valor. I will warn you that there's a couple of particular scenes that get really bloody in this book. So just be wary of that. Supernatural forces. You have gods that are helping him or punishing him. So the idea is that things are not 100% in your control, right? Supernatural forces. I already said that. And then, like we said, everything, it's so simple, yet it seems so important. Like you have to listen to everything I say. Think of like the epic voice in a world where important things happen. Like I could use that voice, and all of a sudden, normal, boring things would sound exciting. This morning, we're going to serve to you cereal. toasted frosted flakes. Like it makes it sound exciting, right? In the book, it's not the way it's said, it's the words that are used. Also, and here's some important terms you should remember: invocation of the muse. So the muse is one of Zeus's seven sisters. That it was in the movie Hercules. If you ever saw that Disney movie, uh, and each one is a different type of art. Poetry or music or something like that. And so the poet will invoke or call to the muse for help. A muse is someone that inspires you. Um, so the very beginning of the book, it says, "Oh muse, I call on thee, or I, listen to my request. Help me tell this story," kind of thing. So that's how every epic has to start: is the invocation of the muse. And it always has to start in medias res. We talked about this before, in the middle of things. You don't start at the beginning, that's boring. You got to start in the middle of the action. Things are already happening, right? And then you flash back and talk about the other things later. Catalog. Okay, so this is the part that gets, I don't want to say boring, but yeah, it gets a little tedious because everything's so epic. Let me give you this list of all these things that I have and all these things that I've done. And let me, in the middle of this adventure, some bard is going to come by and recite this giant poem or story that goes on forever that has nothing to do with the main story or very little. It's more to do in tone, maybe theme. So, yeah, extended speeches that go on and on and on and on and on. The epic simile, which also goes on and on and on. So instead of just saying this orange peel is like the moon, I don't know. It's something like this. Even thus did we bore the red beam, hot beam into his eye, till the boiling blood bubbled all over as we worked it around and around, so that steam from the burning eyeballs scalded his eyelids and eyebrows to the roots of the eye sputtered, and the roots of the eye sputtered in the fire. As a blacksmith plunges an axe or hatchet into the cold water to temper it, for it is this that gives strength to the iron, and it makes a great hiss as he does so. So it's not just saying that, the blood was like wine. It's saying this is like this long, giant description that goes on and on and on and on. So look for that. And then here's the route that Odysseus takes. We're starting the story in the middle of things. I mean, it really starts at Troy, and then he goes, to battle, right? Um, but but really, the story starts in the land of Calypso, and then once we get, I don't know, somewhere, he tells the story of all these things he has to do. So that's pretty much it. Um, Tomorrow, I think I'm going to try to get a video up. It might be Thursday, to be honest. I'm going to try to get a video up that gives you the important things that happen in the Iliad and the Trojan War that you need to know, because they reference a lot of that stuff in this book, and it won't make any sense if you read this book and you don't have that background information. Usually I have students do that because you've all researched it, but pretty much everybody researched Achilles, you know, maybe a few others. So I need to give you all the information on all uh, the people from the Iliad that you did not research. So I'll get a video up of that. It'll be another play posit, and then we'll start. I'll put up a chapter schedule, and then I'll probably just do play pauses, to be honest. And I'm not reading it to you. You read the book, and then I'll put up some videos where it gives you information, gives you the analysis, as much as there is, and then and probably not every day. I don't know. I haven't figured this out yet. And then just watch and answer questions, and that'll be good. So okay, people. Thank you. Thank you.